Welcome back to the Daughters of the Moon podcast. We're grateful that you can join us for another week.
We sure are.
And, and today we have a special guest, Maetreyii Ma. She is an award-winning author, licensed clinical psychologist, and president of Ananda Guru Kula, a nonprofit organization devoted to spreading yoga's wisdom's teachings. With roles as the past founder and president of Ananda Seva Mission, a founding board member of the Kundalini Research Network, and a previous director of the Spiritual Emergency Network, she has long been guiding light in the spiritual community. Dr. Nolan is a psychologist in private practice, an Akriya or ordained yogic minister, a certified yoga therapist, and a 500-hour certified yoga teacher who combines clinical psychology with the timeless insights from yogic teachings to offer holistic healing. She is a spiritual mentor, providing Baba talks, teaching classes, and guiding students. She hosts webinars, retreats, and seminars, creating spaces where individuals can explore and experience the divine. A mother of two grown sons, she lives with her husband in the ashram community in Northern California's San Francisco Bay Area, where she continues to write, teach, and inspire, extending an open invitation to all to explore the transformative powers of connecting with the divine. And she has written a book, Into the Heart of the Infinite. So we'll be talking a little bit about that today. So welcome to our podcast.
Thank you.
So can you tell us a little bit, we read your bio, but can you tell us a little bit about your story of how you got here?
Yeah, that's what my new book, Into the Heart of the Infinite, a spiritual memoir of an extraordinary mystical experience. That's what this book is about, is my story, actually from my earliest mystical experiences. It sort of follows that theme through my life to pretty much to present day. And that's really, I'm sharing my journey with people because I really want others to be able to explore their own journey by hearing someone else's journey, and both the struggles and the profound experiences, to acknowledge and support those profound experiences that we all have and the human potential that we all have to find our own deep inner connection to the God source and our fulfill our own spiritual destiny and transformation.
Beautiful.
So,
yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah, my journey started out really when I was a child. I started with, I had a deep connection to nature. When I was a little girl, we had like a 5-acre farm, and excuse me, I still have a little bit of a cough from a cold.
Okay, that's why I brought mints.
Take it right. Excuse me. But I started out with this connection to nature, and really felt connected to animals and to trees and to just the natural world. And that was very deep and profound for me. And then by the time I was in my early teens, I would say someplace between 11, 12, kind of that age, I began to feel this divine presence around me. And I felt like I had a connection to this presence. And, I had never heard of reincarnation or anything like that. I grew up in a suburb of Chicago, and, very all-American. But I felt like I knew this presence from the past, and and I almost could see this white figure near me. There was no words, no guidance per se, but if I would be stressed or something, I felt this love emanating from this presence, and I could feel that with me. And I fell wholeheartedly in love with this divine presence. I felt like this was the true love of my life, and I felt like it was my spiritual father, and a God presence, like And the only image I ever had at that point in my life of such a God presence was Jesus, right? Because that's all I'd ever heard of this kind of being. So I thought maybe it's Jesus, because that's the only thing I had ever heard of. And I would slip out at night and go for long walks in the moonlight. You're daughters of the moon, so I would I would go for long walks in the moonlight with this divine presence, and I would feel just this immense love and connectedness and harmony with this being. And I would feel it was just walking with me. And that went on for some years, a few years. And I felt this presence and I felt this comfort from this presence. And I had these long walks and spiritual experiences with it. I remember one time I slipped out in the night, and at the end of our street was like a hill that went up to where a water tower was on top of the hill, but it was grassy. And so I walked up there at night and I laid down on the grass and I looked up at the stars. And, you know, in those days there was less light pollution. You could actually see the stars. And I began to imagine how far it was to the moon, and imagine how far it was, you know, a mile, 100 miles, 1,000 miles, 1,000,000 miles, how far to the moon and how far. And I felt my mind expanding out into the universe. And I felt like the earth and was my mother. This world was my mother, and this divine figure that I felt was my father. And that was a powerful feeling that stayed with me for a while. And I loved my parents, but I felt that this was my real home and this was my real family, you know, Mother Earth and this divine figure that I felt the presence. I felt I knew from the past. I felt so connected. And I also felt it when I was a child. I saw this vision of a triangle, and I felt that was my road and that I had a destiny but I didn't know what it was. And I felt like I was at the bottom of that triangle, moving from one where you really don't know why you're here or what you're doing here. And that I would move up and up into my life until I reached that pinnacle point where I knew why I'm here. And so that began my spiritual journey. And then, you know, I became a teenager and got involved in friends and boyfriends and, you know, all of that stuff. And I kind of forgot about all of that. I went to a number of churches and it didn't do it for me. It just wasn't alive, you know. And I finally just decided that there was no God, and that I became an atheist by the time I was probably graduating from high school. And that was the beginning of my spiritual journey. And then, you know, into this wonderful experiences when I was young, and then back into, I'd say, disillusionment with what I saw as religion and spirituality. And then it moved on from there. So that's kind of my beginning anyway.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people struggle with that, right? Like, I think because we're so open when we're young and we don't question things in that way spiritually. So we just allow it to happen. And then we became a teenager and we become sort of in our right minds then, right? We let that go because we do start to question everything and how it feels. And so I think that's a nice thing that you said, because I think a lot of people will relate to that, you know, that is sort of your journey, and you can find your path back into whatever fits with yourself. And, you know, I always felt like as a child, I a lot of times would go down. We had a ravine behind our house, and I often used to go down as a young teenager and journal by the ravine because I loved to be out in nature. And then I too forgot all about that kind of as a teenager, and now have found my way back as an adult. So I think it's interesting, just how the stories kind of coincide with each other.
Isn't
Yeah,
it?
you bet. We all have a story like that.
You also have some feelings like that.
Who, me? Oh, yeah, growing up, I always felt like from when I was even young, I saw spirits and didn't understand them. It was a growing part of me that had to learn, like, don't be afraid of them all, sort of thing. And then as time went on, then yeah, marriage and all the rest of it. And then I sort of stayed into it because I'm really big into full moon services and things like that. So I just love the moon like you. I love it, and I can't get enough of it. When the full moon comes out, it's like, hallelujah, I'm blessed for the day, or 3 days, I call it, while the moon is doing its thing. Where some people can be a little bit nervous of the moon coming in because it does play with moods and all kinds of different things. But for me, I find it just gives me a sense of peace, and it has for a long, long time with me. Yes. So it's beautiful. So it's interesting we're talking about the moon.
Kind of a theme. Yeah, yeah, because it would be. I remember the moonlight nights, and it was very beautiful, very special.
Very.
So do
So
you
tell us
think
about
that
your book.
that's, oh, sorry, go ahead, Mom.
No, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
You go.
I'm anxious to hear more about this book, what you're doing with it, and you said you're doing teaches and things like that. So let us pull us in a little bit and let us know what you're doing with that.
Okay, well, I have other books. One called Living Love, the Yoga of Yama Niyama, which is
Nice.
talking about the sort of how the yogic principles of how to live in the world. They're called ethical principles, but they're really, as a psychologist, I see them as psychological principles, like satya, living in truth. Well, if you're honest with yourself and you're deeply honest with yourself and deeply connected to yourself, then you can be, there's honesty with other people, but there's honesty with yourself, so that's an important principle to live by. Ahimsa, non-injury, uh, do we living in loving kindness, attempting to not do harm, we all do harm, but as much as you can, not living with the intention of doing no harm, does this, it's how you relate in the world, and it makes a huge difference. It isn't just some abstract ethical principle to live by. It's really a guideline for behavior, and guidelines that bring you to an ability to hold spiritual presence. So that was another book, and one with Dharma for Awakening and Social Change. And then my latest book, Into the Heart of the Infinite, a spiritual memoir of an extraordinary mystical journey, has really chronicled from the early times that I've just talked about through my whole spiritual journey, through psychedelics and through the psychedelic awakening and opening, and through my guru in India, my physical guru, meeting my inner guru, my inner Baba, and having all this inner guidance, and then the outer guidance with my physical guru, and the spiritual transformations that I've gone through in that process, and the mystical experiences. So it's really a book about mysticism and about mystical experience, and about the struggles, the struggles that are there when you begin to dive deep, because we can all live on the surface of life and just be material and not really question. And hopefully that works, and you don't. But if you really want to touch spirit within, there is a need to confront the shadow. There is a need to work with yourself and to go through your process, and that has its struggles, and so this book sort of shares my journey and the ups and downs of that, the mystical and the transformative, and how doubt and fear and all of those things play into that, because I don't think the spiritual path is for the weak of heart.
No,
Totally true. That is true.
definitely not. And I think when you're trying to, like you pointed out with your, doing your shadow work, that is not always a fun journey, right? That can
No.
be a really hard one, and you can get stuck there for a long time, trying to get through it.
True, because it's sort of like the inner child that you're going back to get to, right? You're trying to pull that back and reacquaint and get your life in balance.
Yeah, and so I think as you really dive deep, situations present themselves to bring out what needs to be brought out. And that was certainly true in my life. But those situations led to deeper and deeper realization of the really subterranean level of our existence, which is where I feel the God self is, where you experience the unitary whole of being. And for me, the path has led through yogic meditation and travels to the East and all of that kind of thing. But it's really come to recognizing that divinity that exists in our hearts and within us and all around us, in every blade of grass and every living being and all that is, that divine essence is everywhere. And so the spiritual transformation, I think, is really deepening. And there are psychic things that happen. There's all sorts of interesting things that happen along the way, but it's deepening into the reality of the unitary whole of being, where there is that divine love and divine home,
Presence.
all
Yeah.
beings, where we really truly are one.
So
You really are.
do you think that when you were finding your guru, and you said you went to India and found your guru, were you led there? Was there things that happened along your journey that kind of led you there to meet your guru? And like, I'm curious about like what the feelings were around that, and like, did you know instantly that that was going to be a really important person in your life?
Well, let me share how this happened. So the journey started, that part of my journey started, I had gone through my psychedelic era and had my realizations, and I had some powerful spiritual awakenings and psychedelics. It was a door open, but I do believe that psychedelics they're a door, they're a hey, look, see, but they're not a path through.
Yeah.
And then I began meditating. And in the process of meditating, it's a whole journey. I talk about it in my book. There's a lot to this, but I'm not going to go into the details. But I was meditating one day, and after I finished my meditation, suddenly I realized I had been hearing this being talking to me in my meditation. And that in fact, I had been hearing this for months, but every time I would have been afraid. And so every time I finished my meditation, I wouldn't remember it. For months it had been going on. And by the time I remembered it after my meditation, I was completely in love. Just the same love that I had felt as a child, that all out love for the divine, for this divine presence I felt in my meditation. But this time it was guiding me, it was talking to me, rather than just a sense of a presence. There was guidance. And it was clearly, just like when I was a child, it was clearly male. It was clearly again male. It was the same presence. And and he said his name was Baba. And, you know, I was still afraid to have, you know, non-ordinary experience. I thought maybe I'm crazy, you know, I'm having this, just having this voice, maybe I'm
That's a
crazy.
natural feeling.
Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of spiritual people actually have that experience, you know, because we have these sort of standards in our society. And, you know, there is such a thing as schizophrenia. There is listening to harmful voices and destructive energies, but there's also guidance and light and love. And the divine is able to connect with us and communicate with us. And so I felt that divine guidance. And I was just madly in love. Like, you know, it's just like, I want to forget everything else. I just love this being so much. I love the divine. I love God so much. And I think what's really carried me through is that love. But the love is a response to seeing something so profoundly beautiful, to being touched by a love that is so amazing that I experienced it as human love is just a reflection of this love. It's a love so great, so profound that it is the source. And it's a love that when you really get close to it, it's so deep that it's hard to exist in its presence. It's so
Calming. It's so calming.
you know, you know, that's
It's calming to know you have somebody with you that's helping you guide you through this lifetime and also helping you find the things that you need to find as you're moving along, right? And you're gathering that information and the source is helping you together to get the information together, I find, to make it flow so much easier.
yeah.
Acceptance.
And for me, you know, I mean, Baba is like, he's my guide, my inner guide, and he's like a doorway, you know, an amiable, all loving, all compassionate doorway, right? That can communicate with me. But when I go into him, when I go in, then that God self, that omniscient love is there. That is such a great presence that it's hard to be in. It's just unbelievably beautiful. And so Baba has been that door for me, but he opened, and then a period happened where I began to have these powerful mystical experiences. My husband at the time, Jack, at that time, was my first marriage, he decided he was going off for a few weeks to Jamaica. And we were living in Southern Illinois. I was going to Southern Illinois University. I was actually a graduate student with Bucky Fuller. And but everything had closed down. And I had 2 weeks. We had a 1,000-acre farm, and I had 2 weeks alone on this farm. And this being just sort of, I became so deeply immersed that I couldn't function in the world. I couldn't even like feed myself. You know, I was in a state of complete immersion, and it was a state that went between just the bliss of divine love and then thinking, oh no, what am I doing? I must be crazy. You know, I'm following this love, this light. I'm totally lost in it. And I would be overcome with doubt and fear, and I would oscillate between these two states for these 2 weeks, you know, but I was going deeper and deeper. And then he had me begin writing and write down my life and write particularly my birth process and life. And then he said, burn it. This is done. And then, so he guided me through this. I felt like he cleared some karma. And And then at the end of it, I had a very powerful experience. One day I was sitting on the lawn just before Jack came home from his trip, and I was out there all by myself, and I I felt Baba sitting in front of me. I could, see in a subtle, ephemeral way, this being sitting there. And he said to me, suddenly he became very strict and said to me, "You have wasted your life in self-pity.
Well,
And look what I've had to do to help you." And suddenly all my doubt was gone. And I'm going, oh, God, he says, "I'm going to leave you. You don't deserve my assistance." And I went, "Oh,
whoa.
no, Baba, don't leave me." I did pranam, and it's just sort of prostrate. And I did, "Please, please don't leave me." And I felt like there was like, I could see him looking through me, not just me at the moment, at that time and place, but me through, like I saw my past lives, like a deck of cards stacked one upon the other. And I could see them, but I couldn't read them because it was too fast. But I could see him looking through all my lives and what everything I'd been, not just what I was right now. And then I felt this energy rise up in me, like somebody turning up a radio dial. And I felt this incredible bliss, and this world was gone. And instead I was in this divine bliss and this unity. And I felt myself merging into him. And very, very powerful experience. And I just felt a small part of me was not merged, but most of me was in this divine bliss. And I just wanted it to be complete. But I realized afterwards, if it had been, I probably would have lost this body. The body wasn't ready for that, and then it that union in the light, then it slowly, like turning down the radio dial, it slowly began to subside after an indefinite time. And then he said, "Now come to India and be with me in my physical form."
Wow.
And so that's how I got to India. So I told my husband, who was also initiated into this particular spiritual path, and he was open to going. And so we sold everything we had. We gave away our 2 cats and our dog, and went to work for 3 months, living at my parents' house so that we could earn the money to go. Bought some cheapy tickets on some Arab airlines. And I got on a plane. I'd never been on a plane before in my life,
Wow.
And now I'm going to India on a plane, to see my guru, and I'm terrified. But I wanted to see Baba in physical form. Like when I was a child, I just wanted that being to be here with me. I would cry myself to sleep because I thought it was Christ, and he had lived 2,000 years ago, and I had missed the boat, I went,
So,
wow, there's a being like that on the earth, and I gotta go, and so I and not only a being, but someone that was resonant with me from my past. There was a feeling that there was this connection, and that this was a divine presence that had guided me and shown me, the divine. As I said, Baba's a doorway, and he isn't just a figure, a person. He's a doorway behind which is infinity, and that's why my book's called Into the Heart of the Infinite.
so how did you find him when you got to India? Like, how did you find him?
Well, I knew where his ashram was and where he was giving his talks and everything. it was quite an ordeal, actually. We took this Arab Airlines, and I have to tell you, it hopped from one country to another, and we met at every country with armed guards, and then at one point, and nobody on the plane spoke. It was one of these little three-seaters, and across, and nobody on the plane spoke English. So at one point, they the airline stewardess says, "Blah, blah, 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 blah," sounds very agitated. And there's a Jesuit priest sitting next to us, and he pulls out his rosary and starts saying the rosary. And go, "What's going on?"
Right.
So he mumbles in a broken English, engine fail. And I look out and the engine's smoking.
Oh, no.
And so, this is my first plane rides, right? And but he managed to land us in some Middle Eastern country. I remember flying low over areas where there were like mounds of dirt, and they were people's homes that were in the earth, and then they came up in mounds of dirt. I don't know where we were, someplace maybe near Damascus. And then we managed to land safely. And then we got another plane. So we went off to India, and then I got to India, and it was 1970, and it was completely real India. Let's put it that way. India that is no more that way. There was no television, no refrigeration, no radios. There were a lot of beggars, and it was very gritty and very different culture. In some areas, like it could have been 5,000 years ago, it really hadn't changed. And people mostly rode these rickshaws, a guy on a bicycle pulling a little cart. Well, I guess a bicycle is a new invention, but it was very authentic, let's put it that way. And so we finally found our way. We took a third-class train. We didn't have a lot of money, so we were traveling very inexpensively in third-class train. Like there were 3 tiers of people like on top of each other, and their legs are hanging down, and you're scrunched in with people, and every inch of the train is taken, and there's people hanging on the back of the train, and we made it across from Delhi to Bihar state, to Patna, which was where he was, which was the capital of Bihar, and finally got there, and then tried to get a rickshaw driver that nobody spoke any English to get us to the location we knew. It was crazy, but we somehow managed to get there. And when we got there, they gave us rooms in the ashram, which, we had with us a small cotton sleeping bag that on the cement floor. And we had come there on one-way tickets. We did stay almost a year and lived on that little cotton sleeping bag. There's no chairs, no back jacks, no yoga comforts, and we did our yoga postures and our meditation there. And I just did long hours of meditation, and I saw Baba and Darshan. And when I first saw him, like the first day I saw him, instead of feeling divine bliss, I felt like every thought that I had ever had that I wouldn't want to have in front of a divine, all-knowing being. It's just kept bubbling to the surface. It's like it was a detox or some kind of, and it was miserable for a week. And then that process stopped. He gave 2 talks a week. And in those days, it was the only time he'd ever talked in English, but he did speak in English in those days. Then many profound experiences happened while I was there, many things that would be considered miraculous. And I really felt vibrationally, and I was really in the bliss of being in his presence. And I felt vibrationally the inner Baba that I had met and that had told me to go to India had the same vibration as the, kind of like chocolate as opposed to vanilla, you know, like it's all God, but there's different flavors, right? Um, and they had the same vibration, and I felt they were the same, and I fell deeply in love with the external guru. I didn't have any personal relationship. It was, you know, all kept very formal. There was definitely a discrimination against women in India. They basically, the Indian women there, I felt sometimes the cows had more rights, you know. They basically, the women were uneducated. They kept the sari over. They didn't look men in the eyes. They kept their heads down. Men were college educated, spoke English. None of the women spoke English, except for this one woman who was a doctor. But yeah, that was the India that it's very, India today has definitely changed, but in those days it was quite as it had been. And it was definitely a different experience. So I saw him twice a day in these darshans, and he would, you know, he would answer questions I had during the darshan. For example, one day when I was in Southern Illinois, you know, when he had first come to me, I'm going, well, how do I know this is real? And he said something in Sanskrit, which I didn't know anything about at that time. He said, I am your Kula Guru. I went, Kula Guru. And I said, how do you spell it? And I wrote it down, and I went to the Southern Illinois University Library and I looked up Kula Guru. And I said, is this a real word? You know, I want to know if it was a real word. And it was a word, but it said it meant sheep herder. I went, sheep herder? What does that have to do with anything? But at least it was a word, right? So so then I come, and a week or two after being there, Baba gives a darshan. Darshan means sight of the guru. It's when the guru talks. He gives a darshan, and in the darshan, he made the whole darshan about the meaning of the term guru kula, or Kula Guru. And he said, your Kula Guru is the guru who is the guru of the Kula Kundalini rising process. And also Kula Guru is a family guru, which is also the feeling I had of him being, of knowing him from the past, the family. And that sort of made that, you know, he just he answered every question I had, and talked about what was in my mind. And that was so frequently the process. But the interesting part is it was also the process for other people. He was answering their questions at the same time that I don't know how, it's like a convergence, you know, and then all these, some really miraculous things happened while I was there. I don't know if you want me to share any stories of.
I was going to say something here as being a sheep herder. So now you have sort of become the sheep herder because you're bringing people in, right? You're pulling them in to show them the way of following something that they would be involved in, would give them some bliss and happiness. So that's kind of interesting. That's the way I took it anyway.
Yeah, sheep herder, you know, that's sort of the outer meaning of, you know, the one who guides you in your spiritual,
Yes.
right? You know, it is sheep herder. So
Yes.
in a way, you know, the definition in the Southern Illinois was right, you know, although it didn't have the esoteric connotation to it.
Right.
And in fact, I had a dream that I thought maybe I should share with you about that. I had a dream once that and I put it in my book, that it begins, I'm running free next to a wild horse, and the mane is, and my hair are blowing, and the mane of the horse, and it's just this feeling of complete freedom of a galloping horse, you know, that feeling of freedom. And it was just, you know, and I'm running free like that. And the next thing I know, I'm a man, and I'm I'm in some sort of robes, and and there's a boat and a very turbulent waters. And I know I have to cross these waters to get to the other side. And so I get in the boat and I begin to try to row to the other side. And I look down and it's deep and it's dark and it's turbulent and it's scary. But I know I have to row across to the other side. So I row across to the other side of the waters. And when I reach the other side, there's a herd of sheep, and I'm the sheep herder.
Huh.
And, yeah,
That was meant to be.
and I,
Anyways, you're in your right destiny with it all.
Yeah, that's what I think too. Like when I was listening and then listening to your story, it's kind of almost was a dream about your actual life of how you felt such freedom as a child and then went through turbulence to find that inner guru to be able to get your message out into the world and find that inner peace. So I think that's really cool.
I find too with you is you're a free spirit, obviously. And, they were trying to say to you, we need to keep this free spirit out there because you're open to all kinds of different things that's going to take place in your life and teach that to others. So that's really cool.
yeah, and what happened, I had a lot of mystical experiences with my physical guru in India, and a lot of amazing things happened. And then I came back, and then there were the long, long years, where you kind of integrate everything. And I went to school and got my PhD. I had 2 children, and I was married to my second husband, and we saw all different kinds of gurus because my guru wasn't available, and I had a lot of different experiences. And then in 1990, my guru passed from his body. And at that time, I had very deep, powerful experiences. I felt this light in my body and this energy moving into these chakras opening in the palms of my hands and the soles of my feet. And I had just this light pouring through me. And I just, a lot of different experiences happened. I go into in my book. And then when Baba left his body, he said, now you must come to India and be with me physically. And I went back to India, and I was there for his cremation, and some very, very powerful things happened.
I
And
bet.
and yeah, with that experience, it was very powerful. And he said, I'm leaving my Guru Shakti with you to it's in seed form now, but it will grow and bear fruit. And so I didn't know what that meant. I was always a very skeptical person, as you've probably picked up by now. And I went through a really deep grief and a real struggle in my life with grief and with doubt at that point of this whole, what is this Guru Shakti thing and stuff. And a lot of experiences happened, and I ended up, but then as the years passed, a few years later, I began to feel Baba speaking through me, and I began to feel guidance coming through me. And these are something I call the Baba talks, which I do. And I feel myself melting back into him and him flowing through. It's instead of the upward energy of Kundalini going up, it's the descending energy of the God self flowing through like an opening in the clouds and the sunlight coming down, and it just pours through me, and then it comes out in words in these talks. And so I don't think it's exactly channeling, but it's, in a way, it's the divine self flowing through. it's not another entity, another person. Baba to me, he was a person who lived in India, but he's also the God self. He's the door behind which infinity abides. And so it's not a person who I'm connecting with, it's the God self, I feel, and it has that congenial form for me. And those talks have come for many, many years now. And there are many of these talks and a whole body of these work. And in fact, my other books are specifically things on, there are these talks put into book form. And so I give these talks, these Baba talks, and I have satsangs where I give them, and retreats where I give them. And it's something I offer to people.
Beautiful.
And, yeah.
So if you could leave the followers with one piece of advice, thought that you think that would be something important for them, what would be one word of advice or something that you can offer to them that you think would help them along their journey?
Follow your heart. Follow your heart into the depths of deep love, and find God there. Because the true God resides in Hridaya, in your spiritual heart. And it's not a matter of thinking, it's not a matter of the intellect. And spiritual transformation is not an intellectual pursuit. It has to do with opening up to feel divine presence and to surrender, to let go into that divine presence. So if I were to give some advice, I would say, go to your heart and let go. Let go into God. Don't try to control it. Don't try to achieve it. Let go into it. Let
Beautiful.
go. Love.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing, and it definitely resonates with me on a level. And that was sort of my message this morning when I was doing my work that I do in the morning, was right, let your ego go and just trust with the heart. So I think we all kind of struggle with that from time to time, but that's a
We do.
beautiful message. So thank you. Well, this hour has just like flown by. And we loved your stories, because it's nice to see that there's some just raw experiences that we have during life that isn't always this moment. Like sometimes it's great if that happens, but more often I think it's these raw experiences that happen to us to form us and to help open us up to find these true paths and our true inner guru when we're listening. So thank you so much for sharing that with us and with our followers. And can you tell everybody where to find you?
Yes, I'm at yogama.info. Yogama, YOGAMA.info is my website. And my book is available on Amazon right now. It's just come out on Amazon, and my ebook is only 99 cents for a limited period of time. So I'm
Wow.
available to everybody right now. Or I've also lowered the price of the book itself to $12.99. So if you want to have a hardcover to read. So yeah, I recommend it for anyone who wants to learn more on the spiritual path. And if you want to learn more about me and connect with me, you can go to my website and you can write to me. I'm very happy to receive correspondence. So
Wonderful.
Beautiful.
And you have a YouTube channel where you do your Bubba talks?
I do have a YouTube channel, and I have podcasts on Podbean, babatalks.info. I think it is babatalks.info is my my Podbean channel. And then I have a YouTube channel, which I don't know the URL offhand.
That's okay. Well, we appreciate you joining us and sharing space with us and sharing your information with our followers. It was wonderful to have you on. We'd love to for you to come back sometime and tell us some more of your stories as you're going through your journey.
Thank you.
Yes, it's been a delight. Thank you so very much.
Yeah, it's been delightful to meet both of you and be here with you. So
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We really appreciate it. And everybody else, we will see you next week.
You bet you will.